I currently work for one of the largest architecture, engineering, and construction companies in the world, and I'm leading the XR and metaverse efforts of that organization. I work for Perkins and Will, which is a subsidiary of the DAR Group, global AEC company. But my background in this space, I really consider myself to be a kind of metaverse OG. So Evan mentioned the 20 plus years that these ideas have been percolating. And my background goes back to that time. I graduated from architecture school in the late 90s when the internet was happening. Andreessen's first browser was mentioned earlier in one of the conversations. That was a big influence my sophomore year of college, coming back to university and moving from command line and telnet to the Mosaic browser and seeing the web happen. It was in those early days in architecture school where I realized that there was this kind of coming convergence of physical space and in digital space. I've really been working in a variety of ways across my career to pursue that. So I have a kind of long history in academia, working at the Illinois Institute of Technology, and have led a design firm called Sandbox, a young design firm that went on to gain some recognition and win some awards. Around the time of the economic collapse, I realized that I needed to go back to school. I needed to get a real degree in software engineering to take this work farther. And that's what I did. This led to consulting efforts with more large architecture firms, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, and others to explore the idea of the integration of data and spaces and kind of geospatial world infiltrating into the architectural world. I think that these platforms have matured, and in the early 2000s, we were developing in Second Life. The thing that was so impactful for us at that time was that there was a real currency. We had seen economies emerging in massively multiplayer online worlds like World of Warcraft. But when Second Life introduced the ability to actually have an exchange rate and get money back out, it was a real game changer. And it was at that time that I really saw that space as being the kind of epitome of the digital space that we would eventually occupy, and was interested in creating the kind of systems that would allow our physical architecture to speak to that digital space. It's taken a lot of social change more than anything, to kind of Evan's points in his conversation, to really get us to this point. And so now I find myself at this large corporate architecture firm, full of resources and access to lots of clients. And the conversations that we were having in the classroom in 2005 about real estate and Second Life have reemerged to multi-million-dollar real estate developments with large crypto companies and real estate development companies. And so I'm here because the timing is just right, in the right place at the right time. And I'm interested in what's happening at Liberland. What Patrick and his team has done is spectacular. I've really enjoyed experiencing this kind of unique metaverse space. It's not tied to Decentraland. It's not tied to Somnium. It exists on its own. And I see the future of lots of these spaces and interconnectivity. I think what I would like to really bring to bear on this conversation is the idea that this metaverse for Liberland, right now, Patrick is calling it a digital twin. It's a digital twin of sorts in the way that it's connected to the physical space. But in this near term, between the time that we're at now and the time 5, 6, however many years down the road to the point of convergence that Evan described, where our digital life is more important than our physical life, it's in that in-between space that I think is so potent. And I think it's when the metaverse space is not tied explicitly to the constraints of physical reality, but it can become the digital space that it needs to. I think that this is the space that Liberland can benefit from the most. I think there's two sides to the equation. I think on the one side, It's necessary to have the architectural thinking, the sort of spatial geometry, the urban design to help guide and motivate. But I think we need to relinquish ourselves from the control of the physical world and let the metaverse become what it becomes. And I think in order for it to do that, not the developers and not the architects, but the users, the citizens, the future inhabitants of Liberland, they need to get involved. All of us need to get involved to really push and challenge the architectural team to not just think about spaces, but think about user experiences. I want to suggest to everyone that it's not the space of architects or the space of game developers. It's not the space of architects or the space of web developers, but actually a smart partnership of all of those disciplines that are really going to make this succeed. So right now, there's an idea that we can model what the physical space of Liberland can become here. But after that has happened, after inhabitants have moved into the physical space and that plan is underway, the metaverse exists now in a different mode. And so I think there's a kind of simultaneity of these two paths, these two lives of the metaverse. And I'm really excited to get involved and help to push this metaverse for Liberland in that direction.